Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. With OpTic Texas putting up back-to-back top 6 placings after their victory back at Major 1, the question has been raised, if one key game mode for them so far this season continues to fall off a little bit, will they have any chance of winning for the rest of this year? Because the other game modes have not been so strong compared to some of the other teams. Very much appreciate your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. Really up to the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that one. Firstly, we've got to talk about Modern Warfare 2. This, of course, the game for this year, and it's been interesting to kind of hear the thoughts about this the last few days from the pros, because, look, we know the pros love to talk about, we're in for a special year, they do all the tweets, I don't know, we don't think they're getting paid for this type of stuff, but it does kind of look like they are, but, you know, they're probably not, but they just have to say it for whatever reason. I guess they're with the CDL contracted, it kind of is what it is. But anyway, all the pros talk about, yeah, great game, in for a special year, played it in advance, all this type of stuff, but a few weeks before they said all that, we had Doug Martin coming out and saying that his sources had said that the game was absolutely terrible. Now, that was, interesting enough, shortly after the likes of Methodz and Zero and a couple of other pros went to California to actually play the game in a kind of very early pre-alpha build, which some of the other pros have done as well. So some pros have played it maybe more recently than us, some have played it a little while ago, but the discussion on Twitter was that, okay, wow, this game's greatest game of all time, like, wow, we're in for such a good year, or maybe 2 years right of this game, depending on how things go, but others have said that actually it's not particularly good. Now, Methodz actually has some comments on this, so I just wanted to share this because I thought it was rather interesting, that, you know, just as expected really, but as he describes in this clip, like, he doesn't seem overwhelmingly positive about it, right? So maybe Methodz is one of the guys that was talking to Doug Martin about what the game exactly looks and feels like, because he says, look, the game, it's a Call of Duty game, it has its pros, but, you know, we have to hope that the pros outweigh the cons. Because again, he says what we generally do know to be true, that, you know, the game is not built for competitive, right? There are many things in this game, he seems to be implying, that are not built with competitive in mind, and we're going to need to work around that and navigate that if we actually want to make this game reasonable for competitive. So effectively he's saying nothing is really changing their design philosophies, not a massive surprise, but I think you hear a clip like this and you don't want to read too much into what these pros are saying about this. It's going to be the greatest Call of Duty that we've ever seen.
What are your thoughts on playing MW2? Oh, like me playing MW2 early? Listen, we played a very early build. I have high hopes, and obviously I have concerns as well, right? It's always going to be a mixture of pros and cons, man. It's just hoping that the pros outweigh the cons. Fact of the matter is, these games are not made for the competitive community. So it's always just, you know, unless that ever changes, we're always going to have to make it work.
But of course, we are playing Call of Duty Vanguard right now. It doesn't get too much worse than that. I mean, Defag's okay, what exactly is going on right here? But I did want to look right now at the viewership, or just real quick at the viewership between, well, the first 3 majors of this season compared to the first 3 majors of last season. So the first major this year did way better than last year's one. It makes sense. OpTic were winning the entire thing. The first major always does better, generally, and we see this pretty much across the board. Outside of Major 3 last year, that actually did really well, interestingly enough. That generally, the start of the season, the viewership is a bit better. It falls off a little bit as the season progresses, and then when we get to like stage 4, stage 5, and then the World Championship, especially like the final stage and then the World Championship, things tend to kick up again a little bit. Like, I think in the summertime, generally kind of where we are now, lots of people like follow other sports, do other stuff, this type of stuff. Like, the CDL generally does better, and I think esports in general do better in a kind of winter and early season, which is why really we need the CDLs to start next year in December at the very least. But anyway, the numbers are way worse this year, there's no doubt about it. Like, definitely the 5-week break or whatever did not help the CDL at all. There's no surprises about that, and I hope that they do look at these numbers. I think, okay, wow, like Major 3 only had a peak of like 73,000 viewers. Major 2 was almost 100k peak. The averages as well are, of course, a way down event on events. And I think there can be a few causes for this, right? It's not just the fact that there was the massive break in the game, but also the fact that, I mean, look, at the end of the day, Vanguard is not the most enjoyable Call of Duty to watch. It's very repetitive. The map pool is very small indeed. It's not particularly fun to watch. I think a lot of people who still follow the scene and keep up with it would just much prefer to catch up after the fact on the flank or one of these videos or whatever, right, rather than actually watching the games live, because it can get pretty painful, right? Cold War was a much better viewing experience, at least from my perspective. So nothing you can really do about it, but I definitely do think the CDL will have to look at these numbers and think, okay, the viewership is not great year on year. How can we step that up, right? Do we need to? Well, hopefully the contract with YouTube might well come to an end. We can do YouTube and Twitch or something. That we'll see how it goes, but I'm sure they're looking at these numbers because they love their numbers, right? These numbers are key for sponsorship sales and stuff, so they've got to keep an eye on this. Let's talk OpTic then. Firstly, I thought this is kind of funny. Actually you hear from Shotzzy when he's basically just watching this guy play the game. We know that the guys that get to play these games, the campaign missions, are like, I don't know how they move around the map. I don't know like how many years these lads have been holding a controller for, but it's not always so pretty. And Shotzi's like, look, if you want movement lessons made, like, I got your number. Hit me up for consultancy fees. But yeah, this is kind of one of the early missions here. Look, it looks like a Call of Duty game, but and Shotzi's watching it and saying, you know, whoever this is, respectfully, like, let me do you movement lessons or something. Like, you know, maybe I'll teach you a thing or two about how to move around in Call of Duty. A bit of training could come through. Now, of course, we saw this from Ilya a few days ago. The kind of the hourglass emoji comes out right here. Now, he does this one today, and whatever it takes. So he actually says this initially on the big screen, and then Shotzi replies, but yeah, whatever it takes, you reckon. So we don't really know how things are going. We expect by this time, though, that, you know, whatever's been happening with his thumb, because, I mean, I'm pretty sure he said that when he's back in Texas, which was a few days ago, then in a few days' time, he's going to have like a small procedure done, as Rambo described, on his thumb, that's effectively going to solve all his issues. Apparently, we might have heard this one before. Hopefully it's okay this time around. But as of yet, we haven't really heard anything on how well this has gone, or whether it's actually been going ahead. But with Illy tweeting this out, you'd imagine that, you know, he's probably on the road to recovery, hopefully, and doing, you know, whatever it takes to get back to form, because he's not got that long before he needs to be back in full force, right? Because we know that ProLoot was phenomenal for their online sides, but when it went to LAN, slightly different story. And interestingly enough, it was their control at the major, which was, well, significantly worse than it usually is, especially in the series that they lost. And when they do lose the control, they do seem rather vulnerable. So far this season, they've pretty much been indomitable in that mode. And then, well, we'll see how it looks in the statistics side of things here in just a second. But yeah, the OpTic guys, of course, top 6 this past weekend. Also top 6 at Major 2. They won the first one, though. And during that period, Major 1, Major 2, they were just so good in control. That was kind of the key game mode for them at the start of the season, that they were just not losing control to anyone. Against FaZe so far this year, I don't think they've lost a control. But, I mean, they're 22-2, I'm pretty sure, in control, which is such an absurd statistic. They won, what, 13, 14, I'm pretty sure it was in a row, between the Major 1 qualifiers, Major 1, and the Major 2 qualifiers. And then since then, it's kind of fallen a little bit off, and especially at this event at Major 3. And if that continues, the other game modes probably aren't good enough to actually hold up their performances. Like Isaiah Turtle right here says, during Major 3, all of their control losses have now been on Tuscan, and then they lost that one we just saw to Los Angeles Thieves in their series. They were now 10-3 on that map, and 22-3 overall in the mode. So they were 22-2 in control coming into this tournament, which is just incredible, to be honest. And this also had a remarkable statistic. This is when they lost that control to Florida Mutineers. That was the first time they'd lost a defensive round since Major 2. So they'd gone the entirety of Major 3 without losing a single defensive round on Tuscan control. They finally lose one, it cost them the map right. So this is a key point. I'll share what Aix has to say on this and the guys from the reverse sweep as well, because he's saying, look, he's looking at the numbers and thinking, okay, really where the dominance came from at the start of this year for OpTic was their, well, dominant performance in control. If that falls off, it's like you can't really maintain those levels, you would imagine, then they're going to be much more vulnerable, and their other game modes are going to have to improve, notably more than likely Search and Destroy.
FaZe cannot beat OpTic in control. And that was also true for almost every team in the game. They had like that crazy control record of like, but they lost both. In both their series they lost this weekend, they lost both controls. And that's something we've never seen. They were, I think they were undefeated on LAN in control, and they had only lost like 2 or maybe 3 in all the major qualifiers so far. So to come into an event and lose every control lose the control in both series that you lost, to me that's concerning, because
was it Berlin both times?
I think it was a Berlin and a Tuscan. When we're talking about OpTic moving forward, right, even getting Illy back, I think that starts to be a concern, because, bro, the one thing that set OpTic apart from every other team in the league this year is control. They had a record that was like, we hadn't seen a team have a record like that in a certain game mode in a long time, bro. Like, to go 20-something and 2 in a game mode, like, especially a swing mode.
That's one-sided as
That's bro. When we had it in ticks and when we had it in kills, you know, deciding round 5, that was a big benefit for them as a team. And I think if they start to struggle in control, dude, they could start to slide.
So let's look at how this plays out in the numbers then. The bottom left-hand side here is the game mode and map records. So this is basically what I'm looking at here. I'm not really too interested in the numbers of the individual players, but you know, in fairness, Dashy does this season have like a 1.35 in control, which is definitely contributing to their dominance in this game mode. But this is during their dominant periods. This is the Major 1 itself and the Major 2 qualifiers, where they went undefeated, and this is effectively what you're looking at. So when they were completely on top of their game, you had a 10-4 in hardpoints, 9-4 in Search and Destroy, and 10-0 0 in control, playing Gavutu and Tuscan as it was at the time. Now, for some reason, they don't seem to like Gavutu at all anymore. They actually veto. I mean, if you look right here at the vetoes, they pretty much only veto Gavutu. They've never. This is not actually just including this period. These picks and vetoes kind of it stays the same regardless of the periods you select up here in the series history. So this is the entire season so far, and all this stuff is over at Breaking Point GG if you guys want to play around and find this out for yourself. But anyway, effectively they've never vetoed Berlin and barely vetoed Tuscan, but it's Gavutu they almost always get rid of, despite having not lost to Gavutu so far this year. So when they were dominant, this is what was going on. This is the season so far before Major 3. So this is their record this season so far: 22-2 in control as we saw, 23-13 in hardpoints, 17-13 in search and destroy. So not bad at all, but still it must be said that their search and destroy, the start of the season, stage 1 OpTic in search and destroy was so good. Like they were making so many good plays on the map, they were always clutching up, like Shotzi was a monster. But as the season has progressed, their search and destroy has pretty much become a 50-50 game mode for them, which is really not good enough for a team like OpTic if you want to be winning events on a consistent basis, because if you want to go through and win events, you're going to have to win a lot of game 5s, and their search and destroy probably hasn't quite been there so far. And OpTic often don't have to rely on game 5s when they can win their control, because if they win the control, they're either 3-0ing teams as they do 11 times this season to just one time it's happened to them, or they're getting in position to close out 3-1 with a pretty good hardpoint record they have so far this year as well. So this is before Major 3, this is then after Major 3. So we look at the control records, goes from 22-2 up to 24-4, and also their other game modes now don't look so pretty. So 27-15 in hardpoint, 20-15 in search and destroy, right? So it doesn't seem to me that when they lost the controls as they did up against Los Angeles Thieves and against the Florida Mutineers, they lost the series. When they won the controls, they won pretty comfortably, right? They beat London 3-0, beat LAG 3-0, closing out those 3-0 sweeps with them, impressive performances in the control. When they're up 2-0, their control seems to be really good. When it's 1-1 though, it can get a little bit suspect, as we saw in a couple of these series. So what do you guys think about this, right? Because if their control falls off, and it's kind of like the whole Methodz thing that he's dropping 1.5s every single series during stage 2, that is pretty much unsustainable. Going 22-2 in control and winning 90-odd% of your controls in a season is probably unsustainable, right? Eventually you're going to start losing more. And if that does happen, and other teams I'm sure are watching so much VOD on OpTic, right? They're probably looking at all the setups that OpTic are doing on certain control points, how to break them, how to kind of counter these setups, because they are the gold standard of control gameplay in this game, and therefore, they're going to get exposed to some degree. They're going to have to adapt. It's going to be difficult to maintain that level, and if they can't maintain their control, if their control drops to a 60-70% win rate, then their search and destroy probably is going to have to improve if they want to close out on some of these series. So that I think is kind of the key problem for them as time progresses. You could argue they've relied rather heavily on their control to get them through the season so far, and if that does fall off to a 60%, 70% type level, 2/3 of them they're winning, which is still very good, then it might not be enough against some of the top teams if their search and destroy doesn't improve a bit, right? So that's the thing. When Illy comes back, that's one of the key points they're going to have to focus on, because search and destroy, I think, is going to determine who's going to win the World Championship this season. Did want to briefly talk through this before we close out the video, because another Enable tier list, absolutely fantastic stuff. Now, this, honestly, I don't really understand where he's got this from. In fairness, I didn't really watch the entire thing, listen to his explanation, so he might have good reasons for this, but just looking at it on surface, I don't really disagree with the way the C tier is devised right now. Methodz hasn't been great as of late, hasn't had that much impact as of recent, so if you're doing it as a present time, how good the ARs are, I can kind of understand how the C tier is developing right here. But I feel like Gravity in the B tier is maybe overlooking his performance a fair bit, to be honest. I wouldn't really be putting him above Zero and Methodz, for example, and obviously the way these tiers are described isn't pretty much, he likes to say these are kind of interchangeable, but Accuracy certainly shouldn't be at the bottom of the B tier in my opinion. He has to be at least at the top, I think, at least on his performances of recently, and maybe I'd even put him in the A tier. That might be a stretch, right? But we know the kind of intangibles that that Accuracy is bringing to the game right now. Slash you an A tier as well. There's nowhere that isn't faded. This guy has not been playing well at all as of late. I'm a big Slasher fan, but I don't really know how you can have him in A right here. And also Arcitys isn't really the AR anymore, it's Cellium, so not really sure what's going on here, but yeah, just a few things I pointed out, and I feel like Insight should be slightly higher as well. Not really sure that Octane deserves to be up here either, so I appreciate I'm biased more towards team place things than some people are, but still, I definitely change this around a little bit. Very much enjoyed your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below though. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit the like button and tell us the YouTube gods this is a good video, others like you should see it as well, and I hope grow the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you as always, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.